Got an amazing video for you today, my friends. This is Tony. Hope you're all doing well. I found something rather intriguing, or actually my researcher discovered something on a channel that I recently did a live stream on. Paul Staub's channel. Let me just show you his channel real quick. This is absolutely astounding what I'm going to present in this video. This just wraps it all up and shows you everything. We're talking about a number of things. We're talking about what happened in the 1800s, what we saw with all these unique buildings, what happened around 1490s with the Vatican Library. I now have the whole story to that. What happened between Pope Sixtus III and Pope Sixtus IV, and an astonishing thing that we discovered with his name. You are not going to believe some of the stuff we're going to present in this video. This is Paul Staub's channel. I was on his, I think it was a live stream. When was that? Let's see. I can't remember. Was that a month ago or something? Here it is. I was on this one right here with Paul Staub's. He's been around a long time. Not quite as long as me, but quite a long time. Probably about a decade, I think. And let's just get into this. We'll start here with the city of Bologna in the 12th and 13th centuries. We have a lot of strange drawings of this city and these towers where you'll see a vaulted dome over the city. And of course, there's actually a story behind this that I'm going to get into in this video as well. I thought it was kind of amazing. I looked into it. I tried to use Google AI to see what it had to say. It seemingly dodged the question, it seemed like. You still have remnants of these towers up in the city of Bologna today. It doesn't seem like there's any pictures in this article, is there? But what's interesting is I went over to ChatGPT and asked the question, what was the dome over the city of Bologna drawn in some paintings? Now, of course, it also didn't know what I was talking about at first, but then it got it at the end. However, the concept of a dome over the city may also come from a few different sources or symbolic depictions. Symbolic or allegorical domes in Renaissance or Baroque allegorical paintings, cities were shown with a protective dome or celestial vault symbolizing divine protection. Sometimes these domes appear like celestial spheres over the city, referencing religious or cosmic themes rather than, this is interesting, because we're going to get in this video to something amazing I discovered about the medieval times that is going to blow your mind. And it actually might explain this celestial vault or dome over the city and why it was drawn on certain cities in that time frame. Of course, here's some of the remnants of these. I also wanted to show you a different picture. I think it might, is it in this one? I wanted to show you another picture. It's the one I had on the front page. I think I have to back up here. Where did it go? That's amazing. I had it open. I know I did. There we go. Here it is. This picture right here was a photograph taken. And you can see it looks really mysterious. A lot of people wonder about this picture. Early 1800s. We're going to get into that. And then we're going to get into actually a lot of other amazing things. We have all these pictures from the 1800s of these marvelous buildings with very little to no people around, generally speaking. You'll find some pictures where they'll have some traffic. But usually that's more like the 1890s, as you can see here. When you're into the 1830s and 20s, it'll look more like this, where, if I can get on the screen, Here, like, you got these unpaved roads. You got horse and buggy, or in this case, horse and whatever you want to call that. And then you got these unbelievably large buildings. This one might look a little familiar to you. But you'll see a lot of these pictures, they don't have paved roads. And they'll have these marvelous buildings. Here's Calcutta. Calcutta also had the same type of columns, these type of buildings that you would see everywhere else in Europe and in America. Of course, you don't see that really anymore in Calcutta, but they had a mysterious fire back then. Matter of fact, that's a very common theme, actually, is that you'll just have these fires that somehow burn cement. It's just kind of amazing. They'll just have, if you go look through history, there's just hundreds of these. Oh, the whole entire city of Calcutta just burned up with fire. And you're like, how is that even possible? Those buildings were made of brick. Like, oh, but the buildings are gone now. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? But I've covered this before. And what's interesting is we're going to get into, like I said, about sort of where all this is at. I'm going to show you what they hid. And this is detailed. Okay, I'm going to have to thank the guy Paul Stobbs had on. What was his name? Let me see if I can go find that really quick. Actually, there's more than one video I'm going to reference, but who is this guy that he had on? His name is Lewis. He's a subscriber, apparently, of his. Maybe he also watched my videos as well, because I'm one of the first people to actually point out Pope Sixtus III. How about the fact that the literal name of Pope Sixtus III was his born natural name? His natural name was Sixtus. And at the time that he lived, it was spelled the exact same way it's written in Revelation. The exact same way. And that was his natural born name. I'll get into that in a little bit, but this is crazy stuff. So check this out. Here's a city. Probably, I'm not quite sure. This is early 1800s. Check this out. Look how the only thing here is a horse. This entire panoramic you'll see in a second here. Look at this panoramic. Do you see any people? Massive city in, I believe this is America. I think this might be in California, actually. In the early 1800s. No people anywhere. Just a horse. Just a horse. In the entire panoramic of the city. That's a little strange. I think you would see a little bit more in a horse in an entire panoramic picture of like 8 or 9 pictures put together from a very high place looking down on the entire city. You know what I mean? Like, you might want to see, you might see something else you would think, right? A little strange. Here you have Russia. You can see literally this massive structure here, and see how small the people are. These are their carriages. They're literally horse and carriages, and they're sleeping on the dirt outside in this picture. Okay? You zoomed in here, you can see, obviously this is a colossal structure, early 1800s. You see people literally camped out. Does this look right? These are the people that built this? Really? They're all camped out in their little, what do you even call that? I don't even know what you call that. They got their horse and buggy. I guess they're buggy. They're camped out in their buggy outside a colossal building. Of course, they built it, allegedly, right? So it just makes you wonder what's going on here. You, of course, had all of these buildings in St. Louis, Chicago, which is now called Chicago, the Columbian Exposition in 1893. We had the Manufacturers Building in Chicago. And I've shown this before, but to give you an idea of its size, this actually gives you a lot better idea. Let me show you this. So this is a football field. This little green thing inside the Manufacturers Building is a football field. This thing is 1/3 of a mile long and about 1/5 of a mile wide. This is the building that I showed pictures of before. I showed a picture of a bunch of people inside of it. I don't even think they have the picture here. I could show that maybe real quick. I've shown it many times before. Manufacturer's building. I thought I already had this saved. Apparently I don't have it saved anymore. Just a sec here. Building. Yeah, here we are. This will help. Okay, so I've shown this picture before. This one right here. See if we can get it bigger on the screen. This one, of course, and let's see if we can get a little bit better. This is like, I think, from the halfway point, looking from one side to the other. Again, this thing is about 1/3 of a mile long and 1/5 of a mile wide. So, as you can tell, it's extremely large. And they claim that they built this in 1 year with horse and buggy and no power tools. Do you believe that? Of course, they had to get rid of it because it was just temporary. There's no use for it. Why do you need a building that's almost a mile, like a 1/3 of a mile long and a 1/5 of a mile wide? Why would you need a building like that, right? Sit more people than almost any building we have today. I can't remember how many football fields. Let's go look. You can put. I showed you the football field there, right? You could play 9 baseball games in here at the same time. What was it you could do? You could do like a million things. It listed a bunch of stuff you could do. 32 NFL teams could play in this one building at the same time. I think it might be kind of big. Kind of a big building. So you get kind of the idea. Of course, that was before we had power tools. They just had simply horse and buggy. They somehow managed to build that. I'm a mechanical engineer. I kind of have a hard time believing that they built that with horse and buggy in like a year. It doesn't really make any sense. Of course, we have also a textbook about Tartaria, 1835 American school book, talking about the location, the place, the country, whatever you want to call it. The monarch who reigns over an empire takes the title of emperor, or some name equivalents are sultan among the Turks, shah among the Persians, I don't even know how to say that, among the Arabs, and Khan, like Genghis Khan, among the Mughals and Tartars. So this was in a history book from 1835 in America. The first sovereign who bore the title Tsar was Ivan Vasilovich I, surnamed the Great, who about the year 1481 succeeded in freeing Russia from the dominion of the Tartars. Now, this is when everything seemed to happen, was around 1481. We also had something happen at the Vatican at the exact same time we're going to get into in this video. It was at this period that the Cossacks first appeared in history. So everything changed around the time of Christopher Columbus, apparently. You had the king of Tartary right here. Let's see, what does it say here? Okay. About the year 1200 in arms, and his successor, Hakata, following his father's footsteps, whilst being prepared, he prepared his sons with 3 vast armies. See, the word, the letter F is the letter S, I think, before the 1500s. So that's why it's written the way it is. The eldest son, Jacques, marched westward with 30,000 horde. Batha drew with a great army towards the north. Talagdis, however you say his name, being the youngest, fell into the Moors' country above Egypt. Hakata himself marched victoriously into the North America. Subdued. Great part of the Persian kingdom, beat the Turks, led by the general Gunyeta with a great army around 1241. So they went into North America. I've talked about this before as well. This is where I believe a lot of these buildings came from, was these khans that, like this one, Hakata, who marched into North America and essentially took over large portions of it for a couple hundred years. And then, of course, we don't know how, but somehow the settlers came in and took over after that. And these buildings were already in these cities, like Chicago. There's even maps you can go look at from 1200, 13, 1400 AD showing cities already in North America. Even a fabled Viking city was in America already in like 12, 1300 AD. Of course, they tell us no one was here but Indians. Kind of weird while all the maps say the exact opposite of what they say. It's kind of weird. You ask me, why are the maps contradicting what you tell us? It's a good question. China also having some of the greatest cities before 1400s, because of that was the region of Tartari, and there was more than one type of Tartari. Now, I just wanted to kind of preface all of this with what we're getting into. Obviously, you have you've heard of Marco Polo, you heard of Genghis Khan. Interestingly, when you look into Marco Polo, I think, let's just play this and we'll see what I'm getting at.
Interesting that Marco Polo has a depiction of himself wearing a Tartar outfit with the owl. And also, let's keep in mind that China during this time was called Cathay. Marco Polo started his journey in the 1200s and met with Kublai Khan. Yet, what if we're not being told the full story? Kublai Khan is depicted as a Mongol in the modern day. However, there is an older depiction from the Marco Polo book that shows the Khan of Cathay. Doesn't look like the same people.
See that? So Kublai Khan, which apparently is Genghis Khan, this is how Marco Polo depicted him. Literally a white dude with a beard. They tell us today he's obviously a Chinese dude, overweight even. It's kind of weird how it has a completely different drawing. Of course, you could just explain this away, say Marco Polo is just drawing them all white. You know, you could say something like that, but I highly doubt that's what's really going on here. They also seem to have customs similar to Israel. Very strange for a Khan. I thought the Khans were all just Buddhist or something, right? What's going on here? This is kind of weird. So, of course, like I said, you got the very first depiction of Genghis Khan by Marco Polo from 1200 or so AD. Looks nothing like the one they tell us today, right? Kind of weird. But we're going to get into a ton of stuff in this video, as I mentioned. I'm going to show you something almost no one, well, at least unless you follow me, really knows. And we're going to get into actually a number of details I've never talked about, new things I've learned, tie it into modern day, all the way up till now. It's going to be kind of strange. The Vatican, everyone thinks at the end that the 1,000-year reign has never happened. Oh, I don't think you'll probably see that after you see this video here, because we're going to get into lots more details than I've ever gotten into. And we're going to also tie it into Pope Francis and the latest Pope even, because it does tie in. You'll be shocked by it, actually. First of all, I got to mention, go check out my website, grvideos.com. Link is in the description. Got lots of awesome deep dives into random topics over there, particularly into the Vatican, science, history, a lot of things, actually. Link is in the description. And also check out our game. We're making a game, Genesis, or actually Apocryphon Genesis. Genesis meaning like the first one. It's also called Noah VR. There's an opportunity to get in on the investment with this by putting in $100 or $400. There's 150 seats for this, and already 550 other ones have been filled. So this is going to be 700 total. Right now, you will gain 33. You'll be part of the group that gains 33% of the profits when the game releases. The game is mostly done. We do have to do obviously the finalization of the game and finish it off. Then we got to do alpha testing, beta testing. We got to do marketing, but a lot of the game is already done. So if you're interested in getting involved, and if you have already gotten involved, you're actually going to make more money now because we added more percentage on there than before. It was 20, I believe, before. Now it's 33. It's actually higher. You'll actually make more all those who've already invested. If you're interested, you can invest more, or you can invest for the first time. Link is in the description for that. Let's get back to the video. So, of course, we have Pope Sixtus. The way they wrote his name in around the 300 AD. This is how you wrote his name. Right here. This is how you wrote Pope Sixtus's name around 300 AD. You see that? Right there. It's got the sigma on the end. Chi, you see that? That is how you wrote his name in the time that he was the Pope. Now let me show you something. Here is the verse about the number of a man. 6, 6, and another 6. I'm sure you've heard of this before. Let's go look at the number. Here it is. It's the exact same. You see that? That's literally how you write his name. It says it's the number, for it is a number of a man. And there's only one of the Pope Sixtuses who had the name at birth. One of the popes had the name Sixtus, or six in English, at his birth. Guess which one it was? It was Pope Sixtus III. That was his natural given name at birth. It wasn't his pope name. It became his pope name as well. I found this rather intriguing. Of course, they, for some reason, decided to delete this from Wikipedia. Go figure why they would do that. No sarcasm. As you can see down here, Sixtus III was the one of the only popes in history to use his given or birth name during his reign. It says in Scripture, his name, the number of a man. Let's see if I don't know what other translations, how they say it. Let's go look at some other translations real quick. Let's go look. So let's go look at a website that shows them all. Here we go. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number. For it is the number of a man. For it is the number of a man. They're all saying the same thing. For it is the number of a man. For it is a man's number. Is that of a man. It's a number of a man. You see that? I'm just trying to see how they all say it. They all say it very similar. Because it is the number of a person. His literal birth name was Sixtus, which is the name 6. And then he was the third one that reigned. And I'm going to show you way more than this. This is just barely getting going, by the way. Notice who was reigning after Sixtus III, because my theory, and it was based on my dream. I had a dream, actually multiple dreams about this, that God gave me regarding when the millennial kingdom was and who was the one. Who is the false prophet, right? 440 to 1440 AD was the time the devil was in the bottomless, of course, pit. That was during the millennial kingdom. Notice the Pope's name after Sixtus III, Leo the Great, the lion, the great lion, lion of the tribe of Judah. Saint Leo the First was the next Pope. After Sixtus, 6, 6, and another 6, reigned. That's kind of interesting. We have Pope Leo right now, don't we? We just moved into a new, of course, time. We're in a new, or golden, as our president likes to call it, age. We're not in the same time frame anymore. You can see here on the former entry of Wikipedia, they actually put out this information. It was his birth name. Apparently, someone didn't like the fact that I figured this out, or perhaps other people figured this out, so they decided to remove it. Now, if you go to Wikipedia, it doesn't say that. Matter of fact, even Google AI doesn't know about it. Oh, his birth name was not known. But for some reason, ChatGPT does know about it. Pope Sixtus was born with the name Sixtus. unlike many later popes. Of course, this was a more modern way in Latin to write his name, but the original way you wrote his name back in 300 AD, I showed you earlier, is literally the three letters written in Revelation. This is the man referred to in Revelation. What did he do while he was reigning as a pope? Well, that's kind of important. If he was really the false prophet or something, right? You might want to know what he was doing. Well, he decided to say that Mary was no longer the mother of Jesus, but rather she's the mother of God. And he dedicated a basilica to her, almost as if she was a god. That was one of his acts. That's kind of weird. Of course, they all say she's the mother of God when she's actually the mother of Jesus. Of course, what else did Sixtus III do? Apparently, he said monasteries and harems are one and the same. And he viewed the nuns as being his wife. Because he was sitting in the place of Christ on earth, they were basically his bride. So he could do, of course, whatever he wanted to with, the nuns. This is one of his ideas. I'd say that's a little off track. I don't know about you guys, but I think you're probably in agreement with that. Of course, also, what else did he do? He did have an enemy that was trying to expose him as a bad person. That guy strangely got poisoned. And then, of course, when he was going to go to trial for it, he decided to give all those that were going to judge him money and other things, access to maybe the nuns and things of that nature. Well, that's kind of weird. Who else was friends with Pope Sixtus III? This one's going to blow your mind because a lot of Protestants love this guy. This guy was friends with him. His name is Saint Augustine. Sixtus, his original birth name, literally listed in Revelation in the name of the number of the man, 66 and another 6, was friends with Augustine of Hippo. The one that's the revered father of theology for Catholics and Protestants is literally friends with this guy. I think that might have upset a few people that are maybe into that guy. But I'm not trying to upset you. I'm just telling you what it says. This is the truth. You have here, of course, the real structure of our calendar. I'm going to show you actually who changed our calendar. You ain't going to believe all this. It's all here. I'm telling you, it's all here. I'm going to cover every aspect of this. Millennial reign of Christ was 440 to 1440 AD. We have been in Satan's little season until last year, end of last year. We are now entering into a new time. Satan's little season's coming to an end. We were under the red dragon for 500 years in Ona, 500 Ona. We were under 2 white dragons in the millennial kingdom. During the time of Christ and the disciples, that was the time of the red dragon, and you can see it in the New Testament. It clearly states, well, it's not so clear actually, unless you look into it. It says the god of this world is the devil, right? Well, actually, that's not exactly what it's saying. The word world is age. It's saying the god of this age is the devil during the time of the disciples, which was 0 AD to 500 AD, which is why it was so difficult for them to spread, of course, the gospel, and a lot of bad things were happening. Of course, then you had the white dragon reigning for 2 500-year time frames, which is the Middle Ages or medieval times. And this was a time where the reality had changed to where God was over, the true God, not the devil, was over the earth. Even though there's still evil here, obviously, there's still bad things happening. There's a lot of bad church people. There's a lot of bad things going on everywhere. Still, it was a lot better. It was a lot better. Let's just put it that way. So I've covered a lot of this stuff before. If you've watched me, I've actually went into great details in some of those respects. I've talked about King Arthur and Merlin. I've talked about how there was a massive cataclysm right after they moved into the white dragon time, which, by the way, we just moved into a white dragon time. I've been talking about all these volcanoes, stuff going on. There was a super volcano, I think, that went off around 532 AD. I don't know if it would be a super volcano, but basically it covered the sky for half a year and all the crops died. So probably a super volcano or just a humongous volcano that filled the entire sky with darkness for like a year almost. So that happened after King Arthur, when they entered into the White Dragon Age. We're entering into one now. We have Timothy Alberino. He's been talking about how we're, according to his calculations, according to the Book of Jubilees, we're well due for a cataclysm according to how it predicts. And the way I see it also makes sense based on my calculations as well. So we are definitely going that direction. Now, of course, some of you might be like, well, St. Augustine was a great guy. I'm going to show you more now. I'm not trying to, I've never really liked St. Augustine because that was one of the first things I talked about when I got on YouTube. But this I wasn't trying to find stuff about him. It just happened while I had dreams and looking into stuff. You have here Pelagius, who apparently was sort of the teacher of Augustine at first. Augustine was under Pelagius, and then he moved under apparently Sixtus. He moved from Pelagius to Sixtus. Okay? So, of course, Pelagians declared, I think, a heretic by Protestants, if I recall correctly. Although there's a lot of misunderstanding about Pelagius. I'm not trying to get into who Pelagius is. There was something he said that's a little bit like, you could interpret it in a bad way or a good way, depending on how you want to look at it. I'm not trying to get into all that here. But what I wanted to point out is how Revelation tells you about him. Okay? Augustine moved out from underneath Pelagius under Sixtus. Okay? Let me show you. The name Pelagius means of the sea. Yes, the name Pelagius does indeed mean of the sea. What does it say in Revelation? The beast comes out of the sea. Now, I'm not saying Augustine was the beast. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. I'm not quite sure. This is tricky stuff to look into. But he did come out of the sea. He came out of Pelagius and moved over to Sixtus. Then I saw a beast rising out of the sea. Now, of course, I could be just seeing something that's not here, but I kind of think it's kind of weird because it does fit the time frame. It's exactly when all this happened. Augustine also did try to change the times and seasons. A lot of people are not aware of that, although I would say Jerome was far worse than Augustine. Jerome was more so in line with what I'd call the devil. I think Augustine was more of a, I don't know how to explain Augustine. I don't think he's as good as people think he is. Let's just put it that way. So we have here also a prediction about 1 Timothy 4. The Spirit clearly says that in the latter times some will abandon the faith, follow deceiving spirits, doctrines of demons. Teaching comes through hypocritical liars whose consciences have been seared with a hot iron, forbid people to marry, and order them to abstain from certain meats. This is actually a different translation than I usually use. This is NIV. Let's go to King James. Spirit speaketh expressly that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith, speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their conscience seared with a hot iron, forbidding to marry, commanding to abstain from meats. Who forbids to marry? The Catholic Church. Who has meatless Fridays? The Catholic Church. I'm going to get it all the way down to the Papal Conclave. Okay? And I'm going to get into more of, matter of fact, I think, you know what? If you guys are really into this, I'll try to cover this stuff really quickly here, but I'm going to go into more detail over my other channel. Okay? Because there's so much here. You have the patristic and medieval millennialism. Everyone thought the millennial kingdom was coming back around the time of St. Augustine and Jerome. And Jerome and Augustine did not like that at all. The original calendar put the fall of Rome at 6,000 a.m. This is what it says in the apocryphal text, by the way. The apocryphal texts tell us, where is it at? I got it open around here somewhere. Oh my goodness. I literally got a million things here. One sec. Okay, I had to open it again. I don't know where it went. All right, so here it is. So this was written by Noel Hadley. His channel's called Unexpected Cosmology here on YouTube. I'm going to interview him again one of these days. I interviewed him in the past. Okay, so actually, I think I just remember where I had it. Anyway, I got a second one open now. All right. Okay, so if you look at these apocryphal texts, it tells you when Jesus will come the first time. and the second time, actually. No one seems to know this because no one reads these texts. And I've shown this many times before. First Adam and Eve, but only when 5,500 years are fulfilled. At the time I'll give you fruit from the tree of life. He's saying this to Adam. Okay? This is the time when the King of Kings came. And here it says, at the end of a great 5 days and a half, 1 day is 1,000 years, so that's 5,500 years, concerning which I have made the promise to thee and thy father, I will send my word to save thee and thy seed. Second Adam and Eve. Book of Adam, when 5,000 years will be completed. Then at the 5,500th year, the beloved Son, of course, will come upon the earth and resurrect, Adam. He'll be baptized in the river Jordan. I don't know how much more specific you can get, but that's pretty specific. And of course, there's even more. You have one here as well. Gospel of Nicodemus, saying basically the exact same thing again. And then you go down here and you can see when the two olive trees come. Elijah and Enoch. They come at 6,000 years, which is 500 years after the King of Kings' birth, which would be at the fall of Rome, 440 AD approximately. Elijah and Enoch, the two olive trees mentioned in Revelation, come then, according to Bartholomew. You see what I'm getting at? You also have another one here talking about this. There you go. So you got a lot of these things spelled out. And the end was expected after 6 days or 1,000 or 6,000 years. Then you get the day of rest, which is the medieval times, was the day of rest. Now, we had a different calendar put in place by, we'll get into that. You know what? I can't get, this is already 30 plus minutes. I'm going to get into very specifically, and it's going to be mind blowing, who made the Gregorian calendar, who was originally the one creating it before before the second guy was commissioned, and how that guy was literally a relative, was commissioned by the relative of Pope Sixtus IV. And Pope Sixtus IV came exactly after the Millennial Kingdom was over. The Pope right before the Millennial Kingdom, Pope Sixtus III, right after it was over, Pope Sixtus IV. No joke. We'll get into all that. And actually, there's a lot more, by the way. In my other video on channel, God Rules 2. And it's really mind-blowing because we'll even get into the Papal Conclave. You're not going to believe. It's just mind-blowing. And we'll get into the Vatican Library. That's going to be mind-blowing. We're going to get into all that over my other channel. Kind of wonder what some of you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below. And thanks for watching.